She thought she'd marry a handicapped millionaire. But the vows unveiled a secret. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The story begins on a rainy afternoon in a small-town diner off the highway. The glass windows were fogged from the steam of coffee pots, and the scent of fried chicken lingered in the air. Emily wiped down the counter with hands that were slightly raw from long shifts. She was 23. Her shoulders tired, but her spirit unbroken. Life had not given her much, only debts her late father left behind, and a mother whose health required constant medicine. Emily worked 2 jobs, counting every single dollar, hoping she could keep their electricity from being cut off that month. That was when a man in a tailored black suit entered the diner, his presence so out of place that everyone's heads turned. He did not walk. He moved in a sleek wheelchair, his posture regal, his eyes sharp behind dark frames. He did not order food like a normal customer. Instead, he asked for her by name. "Miss Emily Carter?" His voice was calm but commanding. Emily froze, the rag in her hand dripping soapy water onto the floor. "Yes, that is me. How do you know my name?" The man placed a folder on the counter. Gold initials marked the corner. A.R. Whitmore. She recognized the last name instantly. Whitmore Industries owned half the factories in the state. Her heart skipped. Why would a man like this know her? He pushed the folder closer. "You are in debt, Miss Carter. Exactly $78,300. Medical bills, loan interests, and overdue rent. If you continue at your current wage, you will never be able to clear it in this lifetime." Her throat tightened. Who are you?" "My name is Adrian Whitmore. Perhaps you have heard of me." His lips curled faintly. "I am not here to collect your debt. I am here to offer you a solution." Emily's instinct screamed that this was dangerous. But when he opened the folder, she saw a contract printed in neat black ink. At the top, bold words, "Marriage agreement." Her pulse raced. This must be a joke. It is not. Adrian leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "I require a wife for personal reasons. You require freedom from debt and stability for your family. We both gain something. This marriage would be purely contractual. No intimacy is demanded. You will be provided a monthly allowance, a place to stay, and after 12 months, the contract will end, leaving you debt-free." The rain outside struck harder against the glass. Emily's world tilted. She thought of her mother coughing in the small apartment, the unpaid medical prescriptions sitting on the table. She thought of her little brother skipping meals so she could eat. Adrian's voice cut through her silence. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer is void." Oh, she should have screamed. She should have thrown the contract back at him. But instead, Emily found herself staring at his hands on the wheelchair's armrest. Strong, steady, almost too steady for a man labeled handicapped. "Why me?" she whispered. Adrian's eyes softened for the first time. "Because you are different. You are not dazzled by wealth, Emily Carter. That is why I chose you." The storm outside rumbled louder, but it was nothing compared to the storm rising inside her. Could she really marry a man she had just met? Could she really sell herself into a fake marriage to save her family? Yet deep down, she knew the answer was already forming. Because sometimes survival demands choices that love cannot yet understand. And that was how Emily's fate intertwined with Adrian Whitmore, the man the world believed was a handicapped millionaire. Love millionaire Danoi. The next morning, Emily stood in the tiny kitchen of her apartment, staring at the folder that had haunted her dreams all night. The rain had cleared, leaving the air heavy and damp, and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Her mother coughed weakly from the bedroom, reminding Emily of the pills she could not afford. On the table lay the marriage agreement, its edges already worn from her fingers, tracing it again and again. She had promised herself she would never sell her dignity. But dignity did not pay for insulin. Dignity did not keep her brother in school. Dignity did not stop the eviction notice that was due next week. By evening, she found herself outside a towering glass building downtown, the kind of skyscraper she had only ever seen from the highway. Whitmore Industries gleamed in the sunset, a fortress of wealth and power. Her cheap shoes clicked nervously against the marble floor as she entered the lobby. Everything shone polished brass, mirrored walls, a chandelier that could have paid off half her debt. A receptionist looked up, eyes narrowing. "Can I help you?" I am here to see Mr. Adrian Whitmore. He is expecting me." The receptionist's eyebrow arched. For a moment, Emily thought she would be thrown out. But then the woman picked up the phone, murmured something, and moments later, a tall man in a crisp suit approached. "Miss Carter, right this way," he said with practiced indifference, leading her toward a private elevator. Inside, her stomach knotted. The elevator climbed so smoothly she barely felt movement, yet her heart pounded louder with each floor. When the doors opened, Adrian was already waiting. He sat in his wheelchair near a window that overlooked the entire city, the golden skyline reflecting in his glasses. "You came," he said simply. Emily held up the folder. "You left me no choice." Adrian gestured for her to sit. "Every choice is still yours. I only presented an option. If you do not wish to proceed, walk away. But if you do sign, your life changes tonight." She sank into the leather chair, hands trembling. "Why do you need a wife so urgently? You could have anyone. Why me?" His jaw tightened. "Because the board of directors is forcing me into a merger that requires a stable public image. They want a wife beside me, someone who makes me look trustworthy. I will not marry a socialite who would sell me to the tabloids the moment I stumble. I need someone ordinary, someone real. That is you." Emily felt her pride bristle. "So you chose me because I am poor and forgettable?" Adrian's eyes flashed. "I chose you because you do not pretend. You work hard, you protect your family, and you do not beg for sympathy, even when you have every right to. Do not insult yourself by calling that forgettable." Her breath caught in her throat. For the first time, she saw something beneath his calculated tone, a flicker of sincerity. But before she could answer, the heavy door opened, and another voice sliced through the room. "Father, this is absurd." A young woman, dressed head to toe in designer silk, stepped in with a scowl. "You cannot be serious about parading some waitress as your wife." Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to vanish. Adrian's tone was icy. "Leave, Charlotte, this does not concern you." "It concerns the entire family," the woman snapped. "This girl is after your money. Everyone can see it." Emily's hands clenched in her lap, shame flooding her chest. She wanted to defend herself, but the words stuck in her throat. She realized this was only the beginning. The world Adrian came from was not built to welcome a girl like her. Still, she lifted her chin. "I do not want your money. I just want my family safe. If marrying you is the only way, then I will do it. But do not ever mistake me for a beggar." Adrian studied her for a long moment, then slid a pen across the desk. "Sign, Emily, and prove them all wrong." Her fingers hovered over the paper, her reflection staring back from the polished surface. With a single stroke of ink, Emily Carter crossed a line that could never be undone. From that moment, her life no longer belonged only to herself. It belonged to the contract, to Adrian Whitmore, and to the storm that was waiting just beyond the vows. The ink on the contract was barely dry when Emily found herself whisked into a world she had never imagined. 2 days later, a sleek black car pulled up outside her apartment, and a driver carried her few belongings into the trunk. Her neighbors peeked through their blinds, whispering about the fancy vehicle parked on their worn-out street. Emily kept her eyes down, her cheeks burning as if she had been caught in a lie. The car ride felt endless. By the time the iron gates of the Whitmore estate came into view, her palms were damp. The mansion loomed like something out of a magazine, surrounded by manicured gardens and stone fountains that sprayed arcs of water into the air. Inside, every corner gleamed with wealth paintings in gilded frames, chandeliers heavy with crystal, staircases sweeping like rivers of marble. A housekeeper greeted her with a stiff nod, leading her upstairs. The room she was given was larger than her entire apartment. Soft white curtains framed tall windows that overlooked the gardens, and the bedspread looked untouched, too pristine to belong to her. Emily ran her hand across the sheets, feeling the cool silk, and wondered if she had just signed away her soul for comfort she did not deserve. That evening, she saw Adrian again. He was seated in the grand library, surrounded by shelves of leather-bound books. The glow of the fireplace lit his face as he looked up at her. "Adjusting?" he asked. Emily folded her arms. "It feels less like adjusting and more like trespassing." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "Then make it yours. That is the point of this arrangement. Appearances matter. The board must believe this marriage is genuine. The staff must believe it too. Which means, Emily, we live together, we dine together, and we play our roles together." Her throat tightened. "Roles," she echoed, as if repeating the word would make it less heavy. The days that followed blurred into a routine. Each morning, she joined him for breakfast at a long oak table, the silence broken only by the clink of silverware. He read the newspaper while she stirred her coffee, wondering if he ever felt as suffocated as she did. By afternoon, she explored the mansion's endless rooms, greenhouses filled with orchids, a sunroom with glass walls, even a private theater. It should have been paradise, yet Emily felt like a guest walking on eggshells. One evening, the rain returned, tapping against the windows as she carried a tray into the study. Adrian was working at his desk, his chair turned slightly toward the storm outside. She set down the tea, but before she could leave, his voice stopped her. "Stay," he said softly. Emily hesitated, then sat across from him. The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. For the first time, she noticed the fatigue etched beneath his sharp eyes. He looked less like the untouchable millionaire, and more like a man carrying invisible weight. "You are not what I expected," Adrian admitted. Her brows lifted. "What did you expect? A woman who would chase the allowance, demand jewels, parade herself for attention." His gaze steadied on hers. "Instead, you fix torn curtains and help the gardener without being asked. You cook when the staff already does. Why?" Emily shrugged, uncomfortable under his stare. "Because I do not know how to live any other way. I do not know how to sit in luxury while others work around me." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, his lips curved in something close to a real smile. The following morning, the newspapers erupted with photographs of their first public outing together. Emily stood beside Adrian at a charity gala, her borrowed gown glittering under the chandeliers. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions, and she forced herself to smile, though her stomach knotted. She could hear the whispers from across the hall. "Who is she? A nobody from nowhere. Oh, of course she only wants his money." Emily held her head high, though each word cut deeper. At her side, Adrian placed his hand lightly over hers on the armrest of his chair. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it steadied her. That night, as the gala lights faded and the mansion grew quiet again, Emily stood at her bedroom window, staring at the gardens drenched in moonlight. She was trapped in a contract, in a marriage built on appearances. And yet, for reasons she could not explain, her heart no longer saw Adrian Whitmore only as a role. He was becoming a man she could not ignore, and that terrified her more than any contract ever could. The weeks that followed pulled Emily deeper into a rhythm she had not expected. At first, she told herself it was only duty, an act to maintain appearances. Yet the lines between obligation and instinct began to blur. One night, a storm knocked out the power across the estate. Emily hurried through the darkened halls with a lantern borrowed from the staff. She pushed open the library door and found Adrian slumped forward in his chair, his face pale and his breathing shallow. Panic surged through her. "Adrian," she whispered, rushing to his side. His forehead was damp with sweat, his body rigid as though pain had gripped him. She grabbed the phone to call for help, but his hand shot out weakly, stopping her. "No hospital," he forced through clenched teeth. "Not tonight. Are you insane? You can barely breathe." His grip tightened on her wrist, desperate. "Please, just stay." Her heart pounded. Against her better judgment, she obeyed. She fetched a towel, dampened it with cold water, and pressed it against his skin. She stayed with him all night, watching his chest rise and fall, changing the cloth, whispering reassurances she did not even know she believed. When the first rays of dawn spilled into the library, Adrian's breathing steadied. His eyes opened slowly, and he looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You did not leave," he murmured. Emily exhaled a shaky laugh. "You would not let me." Something shifted in that moment. His usual armor of arrogance cracked, revealing a man both vulnerable and fiercely human. And Emily, against all logic, felt her chest tighten with something dangerously close to affection. From then on, their interactions grew subtly different. At breakfast, he asked about her brother's schoolwork instead of burying himself in the newspaper. She caught him watching her across the table, his expression unreadable. In the evenings, when she walked through the gardens, he sometimes followed in his chair, pointing out flowers he had planted years ago, details that made her realize he was not as detached from life as he pretended to be. But with every moment of warmth came an echo of fear. She reminded herself of the contract, of the countdown until it expired. None of this was real. None of it was meant to last. The world outside did not make things easier. At the next gala, whispers turned sharper. "Look at her pretending to care," one woman sneered as Emily helped Adrian adjust his tie. As if love could grow in that situation. Emily ignored them, but inside she burned. Later that night, when she helped Adrian back into the car, she finally let her anger slip. "Do you hear what they say about me? Do you realize how they look at me? I am humiliated every time I step into those rooms." Adrian studied her, his gaze steady. "Then why do you stay?" Her voice cracked. "Because I gave my word. Because I cannot walk away from this without betraying myself." He leaned closer, his eyes locked on hers. "And because a part of you no longer wants to." The silence between them deepened. She wanted to deny it, to insist that her heart was untouched. But her racing pulse betrayed her. She turned away, staring out the car window, her reflection fractured in the glass. That night, Emily lay awake in her silk-covered bed, replaying his words. She thought of the way he had looked at her during the storm, not as a business arrangement, but as a man who needed her. Her heart whispered truths her mind refused to accept. She was falling into the very trap she had sworn to avoid. And the most dangerous part was not that Adrian Whitmore might never return her feelings. The most dangerous part was that he just might. The morning after the gala, the newspapers struck like knives. Emily stood frozen in the kitchen as headlines screamed her name across glossy pages. Photographs of her at Adrian's side filled the tabloids, accompanied by cruel captions. From waitress to gold digger bride. Adrian Whitmore's latest charity case. Her stomach twisted. Each word was a weapon designed to cut away at her dignity. She had thought she could withstand whispers in crowded ballrooms, but seeing the accusations inked in bold black letters made her knees weaken. She shoved the papers aside. But the sound of a phone ringing dragged her attention back. It was her mother. Emily braced herself. "Emily," her mother's voice cracked through the receiver, fragile and heavy with disappointment. "People from church brought me the papers. Is it true? Are you really marrying him for his money?" Tears stung Emily's eyes. "Mother, you know why I did this. You know what we owe, what you need. This was never about greed." Her mother's silence cut deeper than any accusation. "I raised you better than this." The call ended, leaving Emily with nothing but the echo of her mother's broken trust. Later that afternoon, she found herself in the garden, crouched among roses that seemed to mock her with their effortless beauty. Adrian's shadow fell across the stone path. She looked up, her face streaked with tears she had tried to hide. "So, you have read the papers," he said quietly. Emily laughed bitterly. "Read them? They are everywhere. My mother thinks I have sold myself. My neighbors whisper about me. The entire city thinks I am a parasite clinging to your fortune." Adrian wheeled closer, his gaze steady. "And what do you think?" Her voice shook. "I think maybe they are right. I think maybe I am exactly what they say, because I signed that contract, because I let myself be bought." His jaw tightened, his eyes dark with something fierce. "You are not for sale. Do not ever call yourself that again." "Then what am I, Adrian?" she cried, her hands trembling. "Because I do not feel like a wife. I feel like a pawn in your game." The air between them pulsed with tension. For a moment, Emily thought he would lash out. Instead, he surprised her. "If you walk away now," he said slowly, "they will win. They will get exactly what they want. They want to see you broken, humiliated, discarded. Do you really want to hand them that victory?" Her tears spilled faster. "I cannot keep being strong. I am tired of fighting alone." Adrian reached for her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "Then do not fight alone. Let me stand with you." Emily looked at him, startled by the sincerity in his voice. This was not the cold businessman who had handed her a contract. This was a man asking her to trust him, to lean on him. But even as her heart fluttered, doubt gnawed at her. Could she truly believe him? Could she trust that his promise was more than another condition in their agreement? The following days only added weight to her confusion. Reporters camped outside the gates. Strangers sent hateful letters. Her younger brother called, begging her to explain, his voice wavering between pride and shame. Emily bore it all with a fragile composure, yet each wound pushed her closer to the edge. And then, one evening, Adrian appeared in her doorway. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was gentle. "Tomorrow, we face them together. There is a gala hosted by the board. You will be at my side, not as a pawn, but as my equal. Let them see who you are." Her chest tightened. Equal. The word echoed in her mind long after he left. For the first time since signing that contract, Emily wondered if there was a chance she could be more than a role. But she also knew the world was watching, waiting to tear her apart. And the question that haunted her was simple yet unbearable. Would Adrian truly protect her when the storm reached its peak, or would he let her fall? The night of the board's gala arrived with a chill in the air, though the ballroom shimmered with golden light and music that spilled from a live orchestra. Emily stood at the top of the grand staircase, her gown brushing the marble steps, her breath caught in her throat. Every eye turned as she appeared beside Adrian. Whispers stirred like a wave across the room. Adrian leaned close, his voice low enough only she could hear. "Remember, Emily, you are not here to beg for acceptance. You are here because you belong." His words steadied her, though her heart still pounded as they descended together. He moved gracefully in his chair, every bit the powerful figure they expected him to be. She walked at his side, fighting to keep her head high despite the daggers of judgment in the crowd's stares. The evening unfolded as a carefully scripted performance. Adrian introduced her to board members with deliberate confidence, as though daring anyone to question her place. Emily offered polite smiles, her voice steady though she felt each handshake carried an unspoken accusation. "Charming, but temporary," one man muttered just loud enough for her to hear. Another woman, draped in diamonds, leaned to a companion and whispered, "She will not last a year. He will tire of her." Emily's chest tightened, but she refused to flinch. If Adrian could maintain his composure, so could she. As the night stretched on, she escaped briefly to the balcony. The cool night air kissed her cheeks, a welcome relief from the suffocating atmosphere inside. Below, the gardens glowed with lanterns, and for a moment she allowed herself to breathe. She nearly jumped when Adrian appeared beside her. His chair rolled silently onto the balcony, his eyes searching hers. "Do not let them get to you." Her voice cracked, despite her resolve. "They do not even hide their contempt. I feel like I am drowning in it." Adrian's gaze softened. "Let me remind you of something. They do not define you. You do." For a heartbeat, the world stilled. His words lingered like an anchor in her chest, pulling her back from the storm. She nodded, but before she could reply, a board member interrupted, summoning Adrian inside. The night ended in a blur of farewells and forced smiles. Back at the estate, Emily removed her earrings with trembling hands. She caught her reflection in the mirror-painted lips, borrowed diamonds, eyes that betrayed her exhaustion. Adrian entered her room quietly, pausing at the doorway. "You did well tonight." Emily gave a weary laugh. "Did I?" Because it felt like I was balancing on glass, waiting to fall. He wheeled closer, his expression unreadable. "You did not fall. That is what matters." Their eyes met in the silence that followed, and Emily felt something shift again, subtle, fragile, yet undeniable. She had come into this marriage expecting only debt relief and humiliation. Instead, she was finding moments that left her trembling for reasons she could not explain. But even as her heart betrayed her, she knew the contract was still ticking down. The vows had not yet been spoken. The world was still watching. And in the shadow of that looming truth, Emily understood that the storm was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. The day of the wedding dawned beneath a sky as pale as porcelain. The estate buzzed with activity. Florists weaving roses into arches, photographers arranging their lenses, and reporters lingering at the gates like wolves scenting blood. Emily sat in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The veil framed her face, but she barely recognized the woman staring back. When the ceremony began, the grand hall filled with music and whispers. Emily walked down the aisle, her steps steady, though her heart pounded like a drum. Adrian waited at the altar, seated in his wheelchair, his expression unreadable yet commanding. Cameras clicked, capturing every movement. The officiant's voice echoed as the vows began. Emily's lips trembled as she repeated the words, telling herself this was only another performance, the final act of their arrangement. But when it was Adrian's turn, the atmosphere shifted. He set aside the script placed before him and looked directly at her. His voice was low, but carried across the hall. "Emily, from the moment you entered my life, you challenged everything I thought I knew. You never once pitied me. You never once looked at me as broken. You saw me as a man." Gasps rippled through the guests as Adrian placed his hands on the armrests of his chair and slowly, deliberately, rose to his feet. The hall fell into stunned silence. He stood tall, steady, and unshaken, his eyes locked on hers. "The truth is, I was never bound to this chair. I chose to live in it to see who would stand beside me for who I am, not for what I appear to be. And you, Emily, are the only one who has ever proven worthy of my trust." Shock crashed over her like a wave. The world believed they were watching a contract fulfilled. Instead, they had witnessed the unveiling of a secret that shattered every lie. The handicapped millionaire was not handicapped at all. And Emily was no longer sure where the act ended and where reality began. The hall erupted in chaos. Guests gasped, whispers turned into a roar, and camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Emily's knees weakened beneath her gown as she stared at Adrian standing tall before her, the man she thought was bound to a wheelchair. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice trembling, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. Adrian's gaze did not falter. "I did, and I regret the deception. But I needed to know who could see past wealth, past appearances, past power. You did, Emily. You are the only one." Her chest heaved, torn between fury and disbelief. "You let me believe you were broken. You let me fight for you, defend you, feel pity for you, all while you were testing me?" Gasps rippled again, this time at her defiance. Adrian took a step closer, his eyes blazing with sincerity. "I never wanted your pity. I wanted your truth, and you gave it, again and again, even when it hurt you. That is why I am here now, not as a man hiding behind a chair, but as a man asking for your forgiveness." Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to run, to vanish from the eyes of the world watching. But a deeper voice inside her, the one that had carried her through nights of fear and humiliation, whispered that this moment was more than betrayal. It was revelation. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to regain order, but Emily barely heard him. Her world was spinning, the vows shattered, the contract meaningless. Adrian extended his hand toward her, no longer offering a bargain, but a choice. And with the entire world holding its breath, Emily realized the next step she took would define not only her future, but the truth of her heart. Emily's breath came in shallow waves as she stared at the hand Adrian extended. Around them, the hall buzzed with shock, the guests murmuring, the cameras clicking relentlessly. Every voice seemed to press against her, demanding an answer. But when her eyes locked on his, everything else fell away. "You deceived me," she said, her voice breaking but firm. "You tested me like I was an experiment." Adrian's shoulders dropped, his pride stripped away. "Yes, and I am sorry. But Emily, you showed me something no one else ever has. You showed me love that was not tied to wealth, power, or image. If you walk away now, I will not stop you. But know this, I stand here not as a man of contracts, but as a man who loves you." The hall grew silent. Even the whispers faded. Emily's tears spilled freely, yet her heart felt lighter than it had in months. All the nights of humiliation, all the cruel headlines, all the doubts, none of them outweighed the truth she felt standing before him. He had broken her trust, but he had also laid bare his soul in front of the world. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Gasps echoed again, this time of astonishment. "I am not here for your fortune," she said, her voice steady. I am here because despite everything, my heart chose you. But this time, Adrian, there will be no contracts, no lies, only truth. His eyes shone, and for the first time, the walls he built around himself crumbled completely. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, as the officiant, still trembling from the spectacle, declared them husband and wife. The crowd erupted, reporters shouting questions, but Emily heard none of it. All she heard was Adrian's whisper against her ear. From this day forward, no more pretending, only us. Hand in hand, they walked down the aisle, no longer bound by paper, but by a vow that was real. The world had tried to define them, to tear them apart. But together they had turned deception into truth, and a contract into love.